So, Kal Kadosh Boker Tov, Chodesh Tov. We're going to be continuing today on Daf Ayin Aleph, which is Daf 71. So 71A1. Okay, if you want, we'll just start again on the bottom of Daf Ayin Amud Bet, 70B, just on the bottom, where it says Tashema, right? The second last line, which is basically like a new concept, which is basically, again, Rava's coming and he's asking on Rav Nachman from another Braita. The Braita says, Tashema, we know it in the Braita. Yisrael veger ashurin b'megura achat. When you have a Jew and a ger, which are living in separate rooms in a granary, and they made an eruv together, umet a ger, so the ger dies without any type of inheritors. Remember, the convert, he doesn't have inheritors. So what happened is that unless obviously he gets married afterwards or he has children afterwards, and therefore all his properties are ownerless. So the halacha states like this: Mi be'od yom, if the ger died before Knisat Shabbat, which means before Shabbat, even though another Jew comes and he takes his properties, or said he's going to prohibit, right, the courtyard with the first Jew. However, though, if the goy dies only after nightfall, after Shabbat already came in, we're on Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. We already started the new daf.
You're in 71.
71A. We just started. Even though another Jew did not come and take hold of the properties from this ger, in Oser does not prohibit. Because basically, since at the onset of the Shabbat, the ger was still alive, so therefore, even though he dropped dead on Shabbat, but that doesn't change anything, so he's still able to come, and he's still able to carry within the field. Okay? So says the Gemara, okay? Again, we're starting on Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. Right, I'm just going to do a very quick review. We just said, right, that what happened is that we're trying to bring a proof, right, and Rava's asking against Rav Nachman. So he just says, if you have a Jew and a ger, remember that a ger does not have any inheritors, right? Mina Torah, there is nothing, right? So therefore, he would have to have children after, right, after converting. So what happened is that all of a sudden here it says, they're living together, and then the ger dies. So if he died before Shabbat started, so then even though another Jew came and took hold of the properties, because remember, everything's hefker, so you just grab whatever you want and it becomes yours. Still, it's going to be prohibited for the other Jew to carry within this property. However, though, if it was already after nightfall, so it's going to be permitted even though nobody came and took over his property. So says the Gemara, Hagufa Kasha, this in itself is already a question. Right, Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph on the top, right, 71A1 on the top. Amarta, you just told me Bibeod Yom that if it was done during the day, Afal Pi Sheichzik, right, even though, and that's the Lashon Afal Pi Sheichzik, which means the Chidush is that even if somebody else came and took hold of the properties, Velomi Ba'ekilo Yechzik, so there's no Chidush if nobody took over the properties, Adra, but the opposite. Kilo Yechzik, Lo Asad, if nobody took over his property, so then it's still Hefker. So if it's still hefker, if it's still ownerless, obviously it's going to be permitted to come and to carry within it. So what's going on here? Something doesn't make sense, because you just told me if the ger died during the day, so therefore even though another Jew came and took hold of the property, right? So he said, what do you care about if another Jew took hold of the property, right? He says the opposite. Ki lo yechzik lo asar, it did not osir. Okay? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Ema, we have to say, afal pi shelo ichzik, even though shelo ichzik, not afal pi sheichzik, afal pi shelo ichzik, which means, go back to the top of the page. The top of the page said that what happened if you have the Jew and the ger, they're living in one room, in one quarters, right? Sorry, they're different rooms, but within the same granary, within the same place. They made an eruv together.
Complex.
Yeah, complex, thank you. Right, and then what happened? The ger drops dead. So what do we say? We said if it happened during the day, yeah, if it happened during the day, so what happens? Richard, what happens when it's during the day?
Then the other guy grabs it.
So says the Gemara, even though another Jew grabbed hold of the property, because remember, everything's ownerless of a ger. So another Jew came and he grabbed hold of the property, what's going to happen? It's going to be osir. Says now, what are you talking about? You don't have to say, Afal pi sheichzik Yisrael acher. You have to actually change the Lashon of the Gemara to say, even though he did not take hold of the property, still it's going to prohibit it. Why? Because since it was done during the day, that's why it's going to be prohibited. So says the Gemara, Yeah, but we learned in the Braita above, you're changing the Braita. Says the Gemara, this is what it means to say. Even though you did not grab hold of the properties during the day, but only during the nighttime. So it comes out that during Ben Hashmashot, right? That's what we're trying to say. During Ben Hashmashot, the Chatzer was still in the possession of another Jew, right? Only of the neighbor, but nobody else. Since he could have taken hold of the possessions during the day, so he's going to prohibit it, which means even though in essence, nobody had these possessions during the day, it was only during Ben Hashmashot, during twilight, which is between day and nighttime, and that's when they took hold of the possessions. Still, we look at it as if that they took possession during the day, and then it's going to prohibit. However, though, if it was done during the nighttime, and all said, even though another Jew did not take hold of the property, it's not going to prohibit the courtyard. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me even though another Jew did not take it, but if he did took it, the opposite. If he did take hold of it, it should prohibit it. Why? Because now when another Jew comes and he takes hold of it, now there are two Jews, right, that they did not make an eruv. Because the original Jew made the eruv with a ger, but the ger died. He passed away. So that he didn't make another eruv with anybody else. So Rav Papa says, you're right. Ema, you have to say, even though another Jew did take hold of the properties. So the Gemara asked the same question they asked before. 1 second. We learned in the Braita, even though he did not take hold of the properties. Not he did. You're changing the words of the Braita. Says the Gemara, this is what it means to say. Even though he only took hold of the properties at nighttime, since he wasn't able to take hold of it during the day, right? Why? Because the ger only died on Shabbat. So therefore, it's not going to prohibit it. Which means that since during the day he was not able to take hold of it, because remember, if the ger is alive, you can't take hold of his property. It's only once he dies, now you could take hold of the property. So since he died on Shabbat and nobody could take hold of the property beforehand, so therefore, even though he took hold of it during the Ben Hashmashot, actually not the Ben Hashmashot, it was during the nighttime, still it's not going to be okay, right? Sorry, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be oseh. It's not going to prohibit because nobody could take hold of it during the day. So says the Gemara, "Ktani mi areisha oser, amay oser nivatel." Says 1 second, but why did you say in the reisha that he's going to prohibit it onto the other Jew? Remember, ger Jew in the same complex. Yeah, the ger dies. So what happens? Another Jew comes, Mr. Eiruvin comes, and he grabs hold of the property of the ger. Okay, so now what happens? What do we say? That is going to come oser onto the other guy, whatever his name was, Mr. Ploni Almoni, yeah, that he's not allowed to carry anymore. So the question is why? Why doesn't he just mean vatel es chatzer? Tevatel. Annul your reshut to the original Jew, right? And then that's it. So it says the Gemara, my oser de katani, you're right. What does it mean, oser? Oser ad shivatel. It does prohibit it until he annuls his properties. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan comes, and he wants to answer up the question against Rav Nachman from two Braitot in a different way. Matniata, he says, right? Matniata Mani, who is the one that taught these two Braitot? Bet Shammai. It's Bet Shammai. Because they say, you cannot be Mvatel your Reshut on Shabbat itself. Meaning you could only be Mvatel Reshut before Shabbat. I could annul my Reshut to another person. But on Shabbat in itself, it doesn't help to annul your Reshut. Because it was already yours, so you can't annul your Reshut on Shabbat. The Tanamas, we learned in the Mishnah. When are you allowed to give Reshut from one person to another person? Bet Shammai says, Bet mi be'od yom, only during the day. Bet Hillel argue and they say, Mishetach Shach, even at nighttime. So it comes out, this is according to Bet Shammai. And therefore, it comes out beautifully. Bet Shammai say you can be vatel reshut on Shabbat. So if the guy died on Shabbat, right, it doesn't help that somebody else is going to come now and take hold of the thing. So that's why it doesn't prohibit. But if he died during the day, right, and now the Jew came and he took hold of the property, even if it was during the nighttime, he cannot be vatel reshut. It's already Shabbat. So therefore, it's going to come and it's going to prohibit. Amar Ula.
So we're talking, this is Be'erev Shabbat.
In which case?
In the case that you just finished.
No, the case that I just finished was Mishetach Shach, was after Knisat Shabbat. Meaning,
so how can be a Jew koneh on Shabbat from the ger?
How could the Jew be koneh on Shabbat from
even the ger? I mean, for example, from the ger, like he died the ger, and then he have no yorshim, and then the Jew is gonna come and take his properties on Shabbat?
First come, first serve. It's not a transaction. He just moves in. He takes over.
No, but what he's asking is, at the end of the day, you need a form of a kinyan. So if he's saying
The fact that he's moving.
no, but that's shitat Bet Hillel. You're in Bet Hillel, you're in Bet Shammai. Sorry,
I'm in Bet Hillel.
Bet Hillel says אפשר לבטל את הרשות בשביל מי שתרשו בגלל שבת. Right, משתרשה, you could be מבטל the רשות afterwards. So according to Bet Shammai, אי אפשר לבטל רשות בשבת משום פסקו שתי בראתה שניסה באמת מחזיק בניסה הגר, סביב דרך זמן נשארים שלו לביתו בשבת. ההלכה זה כמו בית הלל, שאפשר לבטל רשות בשבת. ודעתם סובר במקומן, שאף היורש מחזיק בניסה הגר יכולים לבטל. No, but you're right. According to this, it comes out that he had to actually acquire it before Shabbat.
Right. That's my
According to
question.
this, you're right. According to Bet Hillel, it has to be done before Shabbat, right?
Okay.
Because now you acquired it. However, though, no, but Mishet Ekshach is after Knisat Shabbat, you could still be Mvatel. There are two inanim here. He's asking not mitzad
the
acquisition. So the acquisition and not the bitul. So that's what we're saying. Here we're talking about the bitul. He's asking on the acquisition. You're right. Mitzad acquisitions, if you came afterwards, it doesn't help because obviously on Shabbat you cannot make any forms of acquisition. So it has to be done before Shabbat. Mitzad the bitul reshut. That's what we're talking about here in the Gemara. It's mishet echshach. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Amar Ula. Ula comes now and he's going to say a third. Right? Ula is going to explain the reasoning, right, of the Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Well, why are you allowed to be Batel Reshut? Not Batel Reshut on Shabbat or not? So he says, Amar Ula, my time at Bet Hillel, what's reasoning Bet Hillel? Naasa ke'omer kelach etzel yafot. It's like somebody that's going to be Batel Reshut on Shabbat. It's like he's coming and he's saying, right, that he's appointing his friend as a shaliach to separate truma from his fruits. And he did not tell him from which fruits to separate. So minastam, the data of the balabait is that he could do from the middle ground. He's not going to be too large and not too cheap, right? So now when the balabait comes and he says afterwards, he sees that he took off from the best of the fruits, right? He's going to tell him.
No, he took off from the medium. He could have taken from better.
No, the opposite.
No.
That's what I have here. Here it says, right? ולא אמר לו מלך, ומן הסתם דתו של בעל שהפריש שניהם מהפירות הבינוניים. וכשרואה בעל הבית לאחר מכן שהפריש שולחו מן הפירות היפים, when he comes and he sees that he took it off from the best ones, he tells him, היה לך אצל יפו מהן, no, he already took from the nicer ones, but now he could have taken even from on more nicer ones. Okay, that's what he's saying here.
Remember,
so we're both right. Yeah, exactly. But he just told him go take off from whatever.
No, he didn't tell him that at all. He told him the guy did it on his own.
Exactly. No, but it's minastam. Minastam means that how do you say stam?
Without his knowledge.
Exactly. Stam is just without any type of knowledge. Stam, I tell you, Richard takes something off. So stam.
That's not what it seems to be from here. It seems that the guy did it. Let's say I'm John Jack's friend, and I decide on my own to do it all for him. I'm his friend. He would want me to do it. He's busy doing something else.
No, but you did tell him, you did make him a shliach to separate the fruits.
That's not what I have here. But it's okay. I'm just I'm a lowly student with Art Scroll. I can't really understand the subject.
Okay, no, but that's what he says here. Here he says that for sure he gave him, he did... he
separated Teruma without his knowledge.
Well,
no,
the truth is...
No, you're right. He appointed the person to separate.
He appointed to the point, but he didn't specify which ones to separate. So mina stam, usually the balabai will probably do from the benonim. Now, when the balabai comes and he sees and know that he's separated from the nice ones, he comes and it's like he's telling him you should have gone even nicer ones. So in such a case, right, the din is that if the balabai does have nicer ones, better than that which the shliach separated, the truma is still a truma. Because we're going to say that that he was megaleh the balabait ato, that it was good with that which he separated. So it's as if that from the beginning he told him to take off from the nicer ones. So the same halacha applies now to mevatel reshu b'Shabbat. When you're going to be mevatel reshu b'Shabbat, you're being megaleh that even on erev Shabbat you wanted already to permit your field, right, for the nighttime, and therefore it's ki'ilu you did the bitul on erev Shabbat, and therefore you're not doing mamash kinyan on Shabbat in itself. So there's no problem. That is the shita of Bet Hillel. Make sense? Yeah, everyone understood? Basically, we're comparing the concept of the truma to the concept of bitul reshut. Just like by the truma, I went and I appointed my shaliach. Now my shaliach from the stam, I'm not going to take from the best. I'm going to take from the mediocre. But now what did I do? I took from the nice ones. Now when I found out you're giving it to my friend, Mr. Cohen, I was, you should have taken from even nicer. So now what happens? They check. If I really behemet did have nicer, it comes out when the shaliach came and he took off from the nice ones, it was actually a good messenger. Because even though he should have taken off from the Benoni and not from the nicest ones, right? But the fact that there were nicer ones, so he was megale data behemet, he would have wanted even nicer ones. So therefore, there's no problem. It's a good truma. So says the Gemara, the same halacha applies, says Bet Hillel, to the bitul reshut. When I come and I'm going to be matel min my Shabbat, I'm actually showing that even from Erev Shabbat, I wanted to be matel min reshut. But I'm not doing a kinyan on Shabbat. So Amar Abaye comes and he says, 1 second. Umet nochli b'Shabbat, my kilach etzel yafotika. The goy, the goy died on Shabbat. So if the goy died on the Shabbat, what do you mean you're telling your shliach? It's not comparable to two cases. The case of the shliach was, I appointed my shaliach to come and to take off the truma. Yeah? Here, everything is happening on Shabbat in itself. How are you telling me, Ki'ilu, I wanted to do it out of Shabbat? Well, you didn't know the goy was going to die on Shabbat. You understood? So says the Gemara, what do we do? What is the argument? The Bet Shammai Savra Bitul Reshut Mikra Reshutahu. According to Bet Shammai, they hold that when you're going to be Vatel your Reshut, you're actually acquiring your Reshut to somebody else. You can't do a kinyan on Shabbat. Bet Hillel says, I'm not acquiring to you my field. I'm removing my own rights from the field. I'm allowed to be mistalek my reshut on Shabbat. Meaning the machloket is it considered that now I'm giving you my field, or is it considered that I'm just removing or revoking my rights on the field on Shabbat? Revoking rights on Shabbat, you're allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to acquire for you a field. So therefore, according to Bet Shammai, it's like I'm acquiring to you a field and therefore it's prohibited to do on Shabbat. According to Bet Hillel, it's like I'm revoking my rights that I'm allowed to do on Shabbat. So therefore, you're allowed to do it on Shabbat. Mishnah. Ain Aleph Amud Aleph says the Mishnah. Balabait that is living in one of the chatzerot in the Mavui. Sheyash shutaf l'shchinav. That he's a shutaf with his shechenim, right, that are living with him. Okay? Lezeh biyain, velezeh biyain. So what happened is that he's doing a shutaf with one with wine and with another one with wine. And all of them are in the same utensil. Let me just see 1 second. Here it is. Yeah, look, everyone sees the picture. If you could, okay. If you want to, we have a live picture. You could see the picture. Look at this. Picture 6. I can see this.
Going to put it on the computer or not?
It's on the computer. I'm sharing screen. That's what I'm telling you. 6:15.
The three.
I forgot it. I have it here.
Okay, 6:15. 6:15 of the new picture book. Okay, or everyone else you could see on my screen. So here, look, right? This what's happening is here you have two chatzerot. Okay, this is one chatzer on my left, one chatzer on the right, and then you have one chatzer in the center. Okay, now this is one balabait, and he's making shituk mevot. Remember, this is a mavui. This is a thoroughfare, okay? This is the Reshut Rabim. Okay, this is the public domain, thoroughfare, one chatzer, two chatzers. Now, he made a eruv shitufei mevot with this chatzer and with this chatzer. Okay, now what happens is that this is the wine. This wine belongs to everybody. You see it or not? One courtyard, second courtyard, third courtyard. This is one balabait. This is a mavui, thoroughfare. And this is the Reshut Rabim, the public domain.
What number picture is this?
6:15.
6:15.
Okay, so what happens is this balabait made an eruv with this one and an eruv with this one. Half a barrel of wine with this one, half a barrel of wine with this one.
Where's
it's
the barrel?
Right here, this yain. You see yain? This barrel of wine. You see it? And it's shayach l'chol b'nei hamavui. It's shayach for everybody. Okay, because that's what it says over here. Lezeh b'yain v'zeh b'yain, and it was in one utensil, so it's in this barrel. Enan tzechim la'arev, right? They do not have to do shitufei mevot. Why? Because they are already mimela shitufim. Okay? Lezeh b'yain v'lezeh b'shemen. What's going to happen though if one of them is going to be with wine and one of them is going to be with shemen? So now that's the next picture, 6:16. So on the right side on the picture, you have shemen. That's the white right? The white arrows and the white, it looks also like a barrel type of thing. I don't know what it looks like. A blue, it's bluish. Okay, shemen. Okay, on the brown one, which is on the left, you have the barrel of wine, which is like the orangish color on the left. Okay, you have it over there. So lezeh b'yayin v'lezeh b'shemen tzirchin la'arev, which means, right, that it's not enough to permit the mavui. They do have to make a shituf mevot. Okay. Okay, so now what happens is Rabbi Shimon argues, and it says echad zeh ve'echad zeh. It doesn't matter whether it's wine or oil or wine and wine. En tzirchin la'arev. You don't have to do another shituf mevot. Which means, remember, there are two concepts here. There's the concept of that they already had, right, a partnership in between them. Okay, so now the question is the partnership in between them, the fact that we all have the wine together, is that enough already? Then now we don't have to do a new shituf mevo'ot to permit ourselves from carrying within the mavui or not? Okay, that was the second picture. Oil on the right, wine on the left.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, very good. Says the Gemara. Okay. The next picture, 617, is even more. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav. Rav says, what are we talking about now in the Tanakama? Ubikli echad. We're talking about if it's going to be in one utensil. So Amar Rava says, Reikanami diktani. We could also deduce this. Lezeh b'yayin v'zeh b'shemen. If this one has wine, this one has oil. Tzechim la'arev. They do have to make an eruv. If you're going to tell me that the Reisha is talking about with one utensil, the Seifa b'shnei kelim, and the Seifa is talking about with two utensils, Shapir, so then it makes sense. That's the difference between them. They're two different utensils. But if you're going to tell me that the Reisha is talking about already with two different utensils, and the Seifa is talking about two different utensils, so Mali yayin v'yayin, Mali yayin v'shemen. What do I care about wine and wine and wine and oil? Just tell me it's two different utensils or one utensil. You understand? That means why do I have to come and tell you that the difference is because of what's in the utensils? Just tell me that they're two different utensils, right? Two different receptacles, and that's why it makes a big difference. So Abaye says, no, yain v'yain ra'ui la'arev, yain v'shemen en ra'ui la'arev. Yain v'yain, even if it's going to be in two different utensils, you could still mix them in the same utensil. And the fact that you could still mix them in the same utensil, that's why it's got different talachot than the yain v'shemen, that oil and wine, that obviously you can't mix them in the same utensil. So therefore, it has nothing to do with the utensil, the receptacle. Because even if the receptacles are two different ones, the fact that I can mix them, that's already going to be okay. But in the case of the oil and wine, I cannot mix them, so if it's not going to be okay. Yeah. Yes, this is a bay. I'm in a bay. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon says, the two dots, echad zeh ve'echad zeh, whether, right, one case or the other case, and tzechim la'arev, they do not have to. So this was the latter part of the Mishnah where he says you don't have to do a shituf mevot. Says the Gemara, v'afilu lezeh b'yayin v'zeh b'shemen. Says 1 second, even in a case where one is wine and one is oil, right? They need to make an eruv. Why not? At the end of the day, you can't mix them together. Amar Rabba says, what are doing with bechatzer sheben shnei mevot. That's the next picture. That's the one right here, 617. Everyone look at my screen, right? Again, 617, you've got two mevot, which means you've got the middle courtyard in between two different mavuis. Okay? Art Scroll also has a picture? Yeah, Art Scroll also has a picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So it says over here, what are we dealing with? Chatzer between two mevot, and it's open to each one of them. Now, what happens is that they did a shitufei mevot biyayin im durei mechad ve'shemen im durei shani, which means so with wine on the right and shemen on the left. Okay, everyone sees it. On the left, you have the two different chatzerot. They made the oil. Okay, and then the wine is on the right. Okay, and on this case, Rabbi Shimon is saying that even though it was done with one of them in wine and one of them with oil, right? It's they're not going to be mechubarim yachad through shituf meshutaf. Still, it's going to be permitted to carry. Rabbi Shimon and Tamen. Rabbi Shimon is going according to his reasoning. Tetanam, as we learned on the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon says, what is it compared to? L'shalosh chatzerot aptuchot zu lezu, to three different courtyards which are open to each other. Okay, that's the next picture, 618, or the Art Scroll also has a picture, right? Three different chatzerot which are open to each other. One here, everyone sees my cursor, one opening and one opening. So all three are connected. Okay?
There's no mavoy. Where's the mavoy?
No, there's no mavoy here. There's no mavoy. It's not open to each other. Okay? And then what happens is...
Internal opens.
I couldn't hear you. What? One more time?
It's open internally.
Exactly. It's open internally. There's no mavui here, right? There's no mavui. This is all internally. 1, 2, and 3, and all of them are open to the Reshut Rabim. All of them open to the public domain. That's my cursor here. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So now what happens? Each one of them, they did Eruvei Chatzerot with their own Chatzer. So you see, look, this is one Eruv, another Eruv. Okay. Ervu shtayim achitzonot imimtzait. Hi muteret imahen ve'hen muterot ima. Shtayim achitzonot asurot zo imzu. What happens if you have that? What happened is you have the two outer ones with the inner one. So if the two outer ones, which are the two outer courtyards, if the two outer courtyards come and they make, right, an eruv with the imtzait, with the middle one, so now they're going to be permitted with them. However, though, the two outer ones are going to be prohibited with themselves. You understand? So
how do they do it so that they can do it with everybody can do it with everybody? Dan?
So Rabbi Shimon, on that case, he actually permits it.
What was the question?
No, he's just asking, when is the case that Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Shimon here is actually saying that in that case, he's actually going to be lenient. And he says that if all the Dairei Kol Chatzer, they made Eruvei Chatzerot to their own Chatzer in order to permit it, right? But if they did not make it between themselves, it's going to be Asur. Okay? Now, if right now the two outer ones did it by themselves, right, with the Emsait, that means they didn't do it all together. The two outer ones did it with the middle ones, okay? So then the middle ones are going to be permitted, but or the outer one with the inner ones, but the outer ones together are prohibited, which means if they all do it between themselves,
A and B and C.
Exactly. Meaning like this, if A, B, and C and they all did together, they're all permitted. But if A did with B and C did with B, but A and C, which are the outer ones, did not do together, so then they're separate. And then they cannot connect between themselves. Okay? So Amalei Abaye comes and he asks the following question to Rabba Midami, can you compare both cases? Hatam Ktani, there we learned Shtayim Chitzonot Asurot, that the two outer ones are going to be prohibited. Here we said that you don't have to do an Eruv Bichlal. So what are you comparing both cases? Here, we're talking about that it's prohibited. And in our Mishnah, we were talking about that you don't have to do an Eruv at all. So says the Gemara, what do you mean you don't have to do an Eruv at all? The neighbors with the balabait don't have to do it all. But the shchenim between themselves, they do have to do it between themselves. Okay, Ayin Aleph Amud Bet. Right, this is 71b. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara. But Rav Yosef comes and he's going to explain the words of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan, beplugta Rabbi Yochanan Menuni v'Rabbanan kapipalgeh. The machlok between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan is the same machlok between Rabbi Yochanan Menuni and Rabbanan. The Tanam is learned on the Mishnah. Shemen shetzaf agabe yain. When you have oil which is on top of wine, now oil will float on top of wine. Okay, and what happens is both of them belong to truma, and it's in one utensil. V'nagat tvul yom b'shemen. Now the tvul yom, remember, tvul yom is a person that was tameh, and he went to the mikveh, but he's still not tahor until the nighttime, until Harev Shemesh. So what happens is that this tvul yom came and he touched in the oil, but not the wine. The wine is on the bottom, so he only touched the top. Lo pasal el Hashem igbar. He only disqualified the shemen of truma, but not the oil which is on the bottom. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Shnehem chiburin ze lezeh. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, they're both connected, and therefore both of them become disqualified. So now the explanation of the machlok is Chachamim come and they say that they're two separate entities, and therefore when the Tvul Yom came and he touched the oil on the top, it didn't disqualify the wine. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, no, they're both one entity, and therefore the second that he touched the oil on the top, it disqualifies the wine and below. Rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, Rabbanan ke Rabbanan. So obviously the rabbis hold like the rabbis, and Mishon holds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and then it comes out beautifully. Okay, which means Rabbanan in our Mishnah that he says that it's going to be asur to do wine and oil. He holds like Rabbanan that they say that it's two different entities, and therefore by touching one it doesn't disqualify the other one. And Rabbi Shimon that he says that you could do oil and wine together. He holds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that it's Tvul Yom that comes and touches them, since they're considered together, connected, so they're both going to be disqualified. Okay, next. Tanya, we learned in the Braita. Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai says, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh. Whether we're talking about that it was wine with wine or wine with oil, Sichim la'arev. They do have to come and they do have to make an eruv between them. And even if they both have wine, you still have to do it, right? Because again, until now we're talking about wine and oil. Even if they're both wine, they still have to do it. Amar Rabba, Rabba comes and he says, Zeba belgino v'shafach, v'zeba belgino v'shafach. Each one came with his own kad, with his own jug, and he poured the wine into it. Everyone agrees that that's going to be a good eruv. When is the machloka between them? For example, that they purchased it already with partnership. Meaning they already purchased the wine together. It's not that I came with one jug of wine, you came with another jug of wine, and so on and so forth. Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai says, Em breida, right? There's no breida. Right? What does that mean? We don't hold of the concept of breida. And Rabbanan Savri that there is a concept of breida. Remember, the concept of breida is that do we say that afterwards it's like as if that we could separate it and would say that each one belongs to each one or not? So Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef comes and he says, Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai Rabbanan, the somchim shtuv bimkom eruv kam mipalgeh. The machloket between Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai and Rabbanan is the machloket whether do we are somech on a shituf bimkom eruv kam mipalgeh, which means as follows. We know that if right now, do we say that this shituf mevuot is even instead of eruvei chatzerot or not? Remember, there's two concepts. There's a concept of eruvei chatzerot, which means within the same chatzer, right? We could come. Hold on one second. There are two different concepts. Remember, there's a concept of eruvei chatzerot, and then there's a concept of shituf mevuot. Eruvei chatzerot is within the same courtyard. I'm living in the same courtyard as Richard. We both live on, let's say, Byron. Right, we're in the same courtyard. So what happens? I make a eruvei chatzerot with Richard, and now we're allowed to carry in the same chatzer. Shituf mevuot is from one chatzer to another chatzer in the same avui, in the same alleyway. You understand? In the same thoroughfare. So there, that's called shituf mevuot. So what is happening is Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai and Tanaim in the Mishnah are arguing to do the shituf which is done in a mavui. Does that also help instead of eruvei chatzerot to permit in the same mechatzer lechatzer al yedei petach shebenehem or not? More savar, Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai holds, and somchim, we are not going to be somech on the shituf, right, of eruvei chatzerot, or instead of eruvei chatzerot, which means that we still have to do an eruvei chatzerot, more savar somchim, and the other one holds that we do have to be somech. So Amar Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, how do we know this? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, he says, Rav, halacha Rabbi Meir, the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, that he holds that the shituf does not help imkom eruv. The Amar of Bruna Marav, it says in the name of Rav, Halakha Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai, the Halakha like Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai. My tama, what's reasoning? Lami shum dechat tamahu. Are we not going to say that it's the same reasoning? Which means that the reasoning of Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai is the same reason of Rabbi Meir. So if it comes out that Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai, I don't know why one place here it wrote down Rabbi Eliezer and another Rabbi Elazar, right? Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai, right, comes and he's not osel letaltel min hachatzerot to the mavui. He's only going to be osel letatel between one chatzer and another chatzer, but not from the chatzer to the mavui. So Amalei Abaye comes and he tells Rav Yosef, if you're going to tell me that it's the same reasoning, so why do I need two different halachot to paskin of Rav, one like Rabbi Meir and one like Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai? Why do we need it? Just paskin like Rabbi Meir, and we already know that it's the same thing. Meaning, if you're going to tell me it's the same concept, so what's the problem? So what we're saying is, why do we need the two different halachot? Teach us one halacha, and it's the same halacha. So says the Gemara, this comes to teach you, we do not do two different chumrot in Eiruvin. Remember that to do with Eiruvin, usually we go lenient. So here, we do not make two different chumrot. One chumrah was Rabbi Meir is posek two halachot. One chumrah is he's machmin neged chachamim, that they hold a shituf, right? That they are somech on shituf, which is done with wine, right? And he says no. And number two, he's machmir also neged chachamim, right? And they say that even if we're not going to do it in wine, but we are going to do shituf and asam bepat, meaning there's going to be two different stringencies that Rabbi Meir is paskening. We are learning here that we do not do two stringencies together in Eiruvin.
Give me an example of two stringencies.
Well, we just said, he said, first of all, one stringency of Rabbi Meir was he's machmir neged chachamim in our Mishnah, and he holds, right, that they hold that we are somech on shituf, which is done with wine. He says we are not somech on that. We are not somech on wine, right? Somech, we do not rely on wine. We only could rely on bread or something else, which we're going to see now. The second stringency, he's also machmir, even neged the chachamim in the Braita, which they agree with him, that they say that we do not hold on wine, but rather you have to do it with the bread. But again, he's going to be stringent, that we're not going to do it even on bread, right? Rav wants to be paskening like the two chumrot. He cannot paskin like the two chumrot, but if he would paskin like Rabbi Meir, the Tana, which is machmir in both, it comes out that we cannot do two stringencies.
Right, because Arab we're supposed to be
Lenient, exactly. Lenient, exactly. So my Rabbi Mina, my Rabbi, what are we talking about? The Rabbi Mina. The Tanya was learned in the Braita. Me'aravim bechatzerot bepat. So this is the next picture. I'm going to share the screen again. Here it is. Eruvei chatzerot. This is picture 620. Eruvei chatzerot is not going to be done. Here's the wine. Here's the bread. You see the picture here in the bread? Is the bread. So it says here, be'aravim bechatzerot bepat. V'imratzu le'arev. If you want to make an eruv with wine and me'aravim, you're not going to make an eruv. Right? Then it says, mishtatfin b'mavui b'yain. To do a shituf mavui, you could do it with wine. So again, eruvei chatzerot is with bread, not with wine. Okay? And this is also bread. You see this bread? Bread. Eruvei chatzerot has to be done with bread. What about shituf mevuot? Remember, this is a chatzer. So eruvei chatzerot is carrying within the same chatzer. Eruvei chatzerot carrying the same chatzer. Now shitufei mevuot is to carry within the entire mavui and from all over the place. So
from each chatzer to the other chatzer?
Yeah, from each chatzer to the other chatzer, this chatzer, and also within the same mavui itself to carry. That's called shitufei mevuot. So here, mishtatfun b'mavui b'yain. You could do it with wine. But if you want to do it with bread, you could do it with bread. So now the Braita continues. Me'aravim bechatzerot mishtatfim b'mavui. You're allowed to be me'arev bechatzerot and mishtatfim b'mavui. So you have to do both, which means in a case where you already did eruvei chatzerot with each other, right? You cannot be somech on that instead of shituf mevuot. Shelo l'shakach Torah Eiruvin Tinukot. So therefore, you don't. And the reason why is because you don't want them to forget what it is, the concept of Torah Eruv, right? We don't want them. Sheomru, because they're going to say avotenu lo eruv. They never made an eruv. Divra Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, which means they're going to say, people are going to come and say that even though meikar adin, you could be somech on a shituf in order to carry from one chatzer to another chatzer, because shituf mevuot basically connects everything to become one. Still, even though meikar adin, it's going to be okay, we don't want that the children are going to make a mistake and think that you don't do that. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Chachamim says, o me'aravin o mishtatfin. You do one or the other. You either do shituf mevuot or you do eruvei chatzerot. You don't have to do both, right? And that's the machloket that we just said between them. That means Rabbi Meir is machmir against Chachamim, and he says you have to do both. Shituf mevuot and eruvei chatzerot. You have to do both connections, both eruvim. According to the Chachamim, one or the other. So it says the Gemara, Pligi bar of Nechumi v'Rabba. This is actually machloket between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. Is a machloket between Nechumi and Rabba. One of them says chadamar bepat. One of them says that the bread, right, is also good. The chule amelo pligi. Nobody argues. The b'chad asagi that one of them is going to be okay. Ki pligi. One of them. When is the machloket? Biyain. Meaning, if you use bread, according to Rabbi Nechum and Rabba, according to them, they say nobody argues. According to everybody, you could use one. You don't need to do both. You use bread. Bread is like the Joker card. You could do whatever you want with it. Yeah. So he says, but if you're using wine, that's going to be the machloka between them. The Chadamar, and one of them says, Ein Bet Amud Aleph 72a1. By wine, nobody argues that for sure both of them agree to be in fact that you need both of them. One is the machloka between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. Bepat, if you do it with bread. So it's a two-way. It's two extremes. According to the first extreme, if you're doing bread, it's a joker card. According to everybody, you don't need to do two, you do one. When is the machloket? By wine. According to the second opinion, the machloket is only to do, there's no machloket by wine, but by wine, according to everybody, you need to do both. When is the machloket? By bread. Is it enough one or you need to do both? And then, or let's just finish until the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, so meitvei, so they're going to ask the following question, Chachamim say, o me'aravinu mishtatfin, or we do one or the other, or eruvei chatzerot, or shituf mevuot. My love, are we not talking about o me'aravim chatzer bepat, o mishtatfin mavui b'yain? You do or, which means that you do the chatzer and bread and the shituf wine. So why? I don't get it. So therefore, the question is, Chachamim already said bestama, and they didn't explain that only the shituf helps in bread. So it's mashma that if you do anything to do with shituf mevuot, it's going to be okay. So the question is, when you just said here, o me'aravin, o mishtatfin, or, right? That's Chachamim. We're in Chachamim. Chachamim say, o me'aravin, o mishtatfin, right? We're right here, where it says, or me'aravin, o mishtatfin, right? We're going to go into the Mishnah, right? So it says here, or you're going to do an eruv, or you're going to do shituf mevuot. My love, are we not talking about, right? And then you're allowed to permit to do both. Or are we talking about marvim chatzer bepat, that you're doing it in a bread with a chatzer, or you're doing with a wine? And therefore it comes out that the wine would help, right? And therefore it says over here, sheladat. So how could you say that according to Chachamim, you're not going to be somech on shituf if it's done with wine? Here it's mashma, it does help with wine.
Well, it says here that shiftuf is with wine and the Erev is with bread.
Exactly, but according to the previous Gemara, what did we just say? We just said, according to the second opinion, wine, according to everybody, whether it'll be, it's not good. You need to do both. Here it's saying that or. And here we're saying we're talking about wine. So it's a stira. So against the second opinion. So the Gemara answers, Manav says, say, or you're allowed to do an eruv with chatzer, with pat, with bread, umutarin, right? And you're going to be permitted kan vekan, right? That means, or you do the bread, and then the bread is going to be permitted for both. Or mishtatfim mevavui bepat, or you can do shtatfim again, but with bread. And then mutarin kan vekan, then you're going to be permitted. So that means he just answers up, no, whenever you're going to do one or the other, it always has to be the bread. Bread is a joker card, and then you can do whatever you want. Rav Yehuda says, and Rav Huna says, no, the minhag is like Rabbi Meir, not halacha. The minhag, which means somebody is going to come and ask the halacha, we're going to tell him that, right? We're going to tell him, right? Sorry, but we don't paskin like that publicly. That's what it means. But the minhag is like it. That means basically publicly we don't say the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, but if you come to ask me, I'll tell you the minhag is like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, nahaguam like Rabbi Meir. The minhag is, that means they had the minhag from themselves, which means we don't rebuke them if they're going to do like Rabbi Meir. The question is, why are you going to rebuke him? Here they're going, the chumrah. Baruch Hashem, it's asked in the footnote. If you look in the footnote, he asked my question. I was going to tell you, if Rabbi Meir is a stringency, why are you going to even think about rebuking them? They're going stringent. So it says here, so why would there be a sigal limchot b'otam machmim gedar Rabbi Meir? Because of the bracha, it might be a bracha levatala. That's why. So therefore, if they already had a minhag because of the bracha levatala, but if you're going to paskin like Chachamim, not like Rabbi Meir, they're not allowed to make a bracha. You make a bracha on their roof. So because of that, that's why the nahagu am ke Rabbi Meir, and we're not going to rebuke them, even though they're making a bracha, and it could become a bracha levatala. Okay, so Bezrat Hashem Chodesh Tov, we're going to continue tomorrow. We finished until the Mishnah, Daf Ayin Bet, Amud Aleph. Have a wonderful day, everyone.